in the moment with each other, and so we can hear the messages that come to us in many, many different ways. Okay. So today, our speaker is Juhl Jaxen. This is her first time speaking with us today, and she's been a sacred light worker who's graced the realms of transformational healing for nearly 3 decades. She coined the title, the Energy Renovator, and her mission is to support the evaluation of community by empowering people to stay aligned and connected to their strengths, purpose, and power so they can continue growing and expanding in miraculous ways. She has seasoned expertise as an intuitive coach, an energy mentor, and she empowers people seeking to make positive and powerful life changes. She's a skilled master dowser and environmental healer, and she has also nurtured countless souls on their transformational paths through life-changing retreats from Naples, Florida, I've been there, to mystical landscape at Sedona, from Mount Shasta to the beautiful hills of Tuscany, Italy. And they are beautiful. I don't know if you've ever been there. They're gorgeous. So fun facts, in 2022, Juhl put her house in storage and was called to travel the US to create a powerful crystal grid to open hearts, heal, and raise the vibration for a new world to emerge. So far to date, she has buried more than 32 crystals in 27 ceremonies over 18 different states. Wow. She's a published writer who had a column in Definitive Women magazine for 5 years. And she recently published a book close to her heart, a homemade healthy dog food cookbook. Please welcome Juhl Jaxen.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today. When Gary asked me to speak, he said, our theme for February is triggers. And I said, okay, let's do this. And so this morning I was talking with Lindsay, who did the movement before before this, and she was doing movement here, and she said, I saw that you're doing triggers, and it actually triggered me. So I said, listen to yourself. If we're talking about triggers, listen to how you're feeling as we go through this. But I want to tell you that this is my goal for today. I hope that I inform you and I inspire you in some way as we talk about these different triggers. I hope you leave here having a deeper connection with yourself, maybe a spark of greater awareness. And you're going to hear me repeat this over and over, how awareness is key when we talk about triggers. And when we have more awareness, then we can start investigating ourselves further and deeper. And I call them connecting the dots. And I'm going to share some of my own personal stories where you'll see that the dots weren't getting connected, and all of a sudden they started getting connected. A better understanding about your own triggers, and of course, having self-compassion and self-love, which is key for transformation and change. So today we're going to explore what are triggers. We're going to understand the origins. How did they start? How do they form? I'm going to give some examples of triggers, and then we're going to talk about the power of awareness. That is the foundational key. And then there's a technique I want to share with you called released. And this can give us some empowering steps to take to begin to work with the triggers that we have so we can lessen the degree of the amplification of them or to help heal them in some way, shape, or form. And then I'd like to finish today with a transforming and healing meditation, if you guys are open to that. So, anybody seen this before? Know this phrase? I think we all do. And the reason I put this up here is because I find this phrase, things we resist are things that persist. When we come up against something in our lives and we're in resistance to it, that is, I call it a tell. That is an area that we should be putting a magnifying glass on and looking more deeper into that. Because there's reasons when we come into resistance, there's places that we can go in and do more healing or some investigation. So I wanted to start with that because this can relate to our triggers. Triggers create patterns. And when we start to become aware of that, then we can go, I see that there's resistance happening here in my life. How did this start? Where did this come from? But we can go in and start to investigate because we don't want things to continue to persist in that way. So what is the definition of a trigger? Anybody remember Schoolhouse Rock? The person, place, or thing, I couldn't resist it. Okay, so it could be a person, place, or thing. Also a situation or event that elicits an intense, unexpected emotional response, or it can cause an individual to relive a past trauma. So these are what we're talking about today when we talk about triggers. Now, if you note on the bottom, it says any sensory stimulus can potentially trigger us. So keep that in mind. We're going to tap into that in just a little bit. So looking at the origins, let's start to understand how do these show up? What happens? How do they start? This is where we want to get our investigation groove on and start looking more closely at ourselves. And this is really working on yourself, not your neighbor, because nobody wants to be, hey, you should work on that trigger over there, right? I always say work on yourself first. Anybody, you agree with me on that one? Yes. Take it in here. Okay, so did you know that our 5 senses play a significant role in forming our memories? So one theory suggests that, boom. One theory suggests that our intense feelings come from our 5 senses being activated and involved. So what are we seeing? What are we hearing in the moment? What are we tasting? What are we touching? What are we feeling? Smelling? All of those things. Our senses, when they get heightened like that, can activate and start to form things. So I have a question for you guys. Patchouli. Raise your hand if you like the smell of patchouli and you enjoy it. Okay, I would say about half. Raise your hand if you do not like the smell of patchouli. Okay, less. I'm in that category, and I want to tell you a story about this. This became a trigger for me, but I didn't discover it until probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the actual root of where this happened. So back when I was a lot younger, in my 20s, I worked at a bar restaurant in downtown Minneapolis, and I was a cocktail waitress, and there was another woman who worked on the server side, and she had been dating this gentleman that we both worked with. They broke up, and I started hanging out with this guy. And one day, I was at work and doing roll-ups, getting ready, and she came marching over to the side where I was working, and she said, "Are you hanging out with Jay?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we're just friends, just hanging out. And she lost her mind. And she started yelling, screaming, crying, and actually taking plates and smashing them on the floor right in front of me. And like making a big scene. And I was kind of taken aback because we literally were just like hanging out, like, let's go to a park or let's go, And I stayed calm. And I just said, it sounds like there's some miscommunication between you two. And I said, I'm sorry that happened, but I think the issue that you have is with him and not me. So I would suggest you go talk to him. I stayed really calm and professional. It was in the middle of a work day. But what I didn't realize until many years later is that she wore patchouli and was like an overabundance of patchouli. And we continued to work together. And so I would be, smelling her and being around her. And I would notice, I didn't put this together until later, but I would feel anxious around her, or I'd feel threatened, like, that smell created a threat to me. And years went by, and I never put this together, but I really don't like the smell of patchouli, but I know that was when it implanted. That's when that trigger began, because I felt threatened, I felt scared, I was worried, anxious to be around her. So I wanted to just point that out, that our senses are powerhouses when we experience something like that, it can lock in. But when we can start to go, I still don't like the smell of patchouli, but when I smell it, I don't kind of feel anxious. I don't have that threat like someone wearing patchouli is going to be threatening to me, right? I don't have that vibe anymore because I've understood the difference between the threat that's real and the threat that's not real. So I wanted to just share that story with you as an example. So when we experience trauma, our brains take the surrounding stimuli and they actually store them in our memory banks. So that's what our brain does. It goes, you were seeing this, you felt this, you smelled this, you tasted this, and it goes, and it stores it in our memory banks. And then what can happen? We experience the trigger, and our brain may reactivate those feelings associated with that trauma. And notice how I have the word may highlighted, because it might not. It depends on the severity and how we go through triggers. So this next slide is really important because I want to talk about this. There are factors in how we this didn't work, let's give it a try. Boom. Okay, boom. Anyone? There we go. So there are several factors on how individuals respond to traumatic events or situations. So personality. We might have somebody who's a highly sensitive person and an empath, and they take in all the information and internalize it. You might have somebody whose personality trait is like, they just brush everything off and they're kind of like, whatever, I'm good, let's just keep moving, keep rolling. So your personality depends on how you're going to receive the trigger, lock it in or not. Our socio-cultural history. So I want to give this example, and I just wrote a book about homemade dog food cookbook. So in our Western culture, we obviously think of pets as our beloveds, our fur babies, right? Whether you're a dog lover or a cat lover, but in this culture, we love dogs, right? They're part of our family. There are other cultures, however, that don't, they're fearful of dogs, or they think they're impure, or they're afraid of them. And so if two people from different cultures had an experience of a dog running at them at a park and jumping on them, it would be very different. One might get triggered and one might not get triggered at all, depending on their culture and their history. Different stages of people's emotional development. So here's just a random example. If there's a 16-year-old who's at a bank, who's getting a checkbook for the first time, getting a checking account, and there's a 55-year-old at the bank doing a deposit, and they're both there during a bank robbery. Do you think they're going to have they could have different responses depending on their emotional development of what they experienced in that moment? You're right? Because the 16-year-old hasn't lived life enough and had a lot of emotional EQ development along the way. So that varies, triggers as well. And then specific characteristics. Every event has a different flavor, so to speak. Some are mild, some are more extreme. And even how we perceive the characteristics of the event. And here's an example. We all probably were traumatized by watching 9/11 on the television. But if you grab somebody who was 4 blocks from the building on the floor, smelling, hearing, feeling, their senses were heightened, that's going to be a different level of trauma, even though two people experience the same thing, but in different ways. So the characteristics make a difference. And then obviously, what do we give meaning to it? We all can make up a story in our head and say, this happened to me because the world's against me. Or this happened to me, I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or this happened, and I'm going to choose to take this as a lesson, and I'm going to learn from it. Do you see how there's different degrees of the meaning that we can give a trigger? So there's so many variables. But I think if we become aware of this, then we can start to look at ourselves. Where did I get triggered? When did I get triggered? How am I connecting the dots here and seeing how can I start to move forward with this in a new way? So I always think information is wonderful to have. And here's a quote by Eckhart. Oh, where did that go? Gary, anyone? It's like gone. Well, the quote is, the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but our thought about it. So we choose how we perceive and the thoughts that come from that. So our thoughts and our perceptions play interpretations of any situation, including triggers, play a significant role in our emotional well-being. So by changing our perceptions and the response to any challenge that comes our way, we can cultivate a greater sense of peace and happiness for ourselves. So I wanted to put that quote in there because it's just so important. How we perceive a situation can determine if we're going to kind of get stuck in there or not. I'm going to keep talking if that's okay without the visuals, and we can pop back in there if we get them going. Oh, well, that's a little too far. Let's go back. That's all right. So I want to give analogies. I love analogies. They always stick for me, so maybe they'll stick for you. Think of a trigger as a thorn. And when you get hit with that trigger, boom, it embeds in your skin, in your flesh. And over time, it's kind of sitting there. You know it's there, and it's irritating. But then down the road, someone comes along, and they start wiggling it, or they poke it, or they irritate it. It inflames that trigger again, and you go into that response, right? So think of triggers as little thorns in your flesh. And today is about how can we discover ways to remove the triggers, little tweezers, and start tweezing these out. So that's the analogy I wanted to share with you to give you some ideas of what we're doing. So let's get some examples of triggers today. Now, this is not the end-all be-all list. There's a lot of things, a lot of variables, as we talked about, that can set into a trigger. But these are just some that came forward to share with you today. This first one is, I think, the most obvious one, a traumatic event. And I kind of gathered this into one big pot. It can be a variety. It could be an accident. It could be a crime. It could be abuse, neglect, a catastrophe. Anything that leaves us feeling fearful, lack of control, deep pain, helplessness, unsafe. Like I call this one the heavy hitter, right? Like a traumatic event. So I wanted to share with you one of my stories. Wow, this is just going crazy. Where is it going? There we go. I want to share with you my car accident trigger story. So back, I would say between the ages of 15 to 25, I was in several car accidents where I was mostly a passenger, where we rear-ended people. I was in a car where we slid on ice and then we hit a car. We couldn't see them coming. So different types of accidents, not anything severe, but fender benders that were still scary. And over time after that, I noticed I was a hot mess whenever I was a passenger in the car. When I was driving, I was fine. But when I was a passenger, I noticed if I would start, reaching out and putting my foot in the floor. Anybody do this? Anybody? You got triggers like me? So I had a hard time. My heart would race. I couldn't breathe, and I was so nervous being a passenger in the car. And so what that led to is I would always say, well, I'll just drive. Let me drive. I'll be the driver. I mean, I drove all the time because then I could stop that trigger from happening. And so this was a story that I wanted to share because it's going to come back, tie in later. But this is how, things like that can set in. And what I noticed years down the road was what was triggering me was it was sight and it was feeling. If I could see that traffic was stopped and our cars were coming up too fast, and I could see, oh my gosh, we're going to have to really slam on the brakes here to stop. I could see that happening. And the second thing was the feel of the brake and my body being pushed forward. That was the trigger, was that movement. My heart would go and I would sweat and do you remember when we didn't have seatbelts and parents used to do this? I would start doing that in the car, like to hold people back. And so having the awareness, then I start to go, oh, the sensation is the brake for me. And that's why I said I want to drive, because then I'm in control of the brake. See? But having this information can really help you to start to untangle these if you choose to. That's the key, it's a choice, right? So here are some more examples. Anybody get triggered by their family? Anybody? Oh yeah, all our hands should be up, right? Family dynamics can cause triggers. Conflicts, it's a real deal. Work criticism. We can get negative feedback or being criticized at work. That can, the reason I'm sharing all these kind of other ones here is sometimes we don't even realize, oh my gosh, back when I was in my 20s, my boss totally ridiculed me in front of my coworkers. You forget about that. And then you wonder why every time you go to work, when your boss walks in the room, you just start like freaking out. Do you see what I'm saying? Like when you can start to connect the dots, that's where then you can start to heal, shift, and change things if you want to. But I think there's power in knowledge and there's power in connecting the dots. And so that's why I'm sharing some of these things, because for me, I didn't get the patchouli thing until about 5 years ago. It lit me up, and then I'm like, okay, I can work with this in a different way. So here's some other ones. This is really touchy. Workplace criticism, financial challenges, relationship breakups. Come on now. You're having such a hard time. There we go. So rejection, end of a relationship, feeling abandoned, unworthy. Loss. So this can be loss of a loved one. It can also be loss of a situation, like a loss of a house, loss of a marriage, loss of a friendship, loss of a job. Health issues. This can be triggering, and it can be health issues for you. It can be health issues for a loved one, a friend, a family. Think of all that the feelings of that can bring, but think about the triggers that can show up. The sound of the beep, 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 the smell of a hospital. You all know hospitals kind of have a different smell to them. It could be the sound of a cuff of a, right? I mean, all those are sensory things. So think about, in all these examples, the sensory things that can show up within the workplace, within the relationships, within the hospitals. That's the sensory piece is what kind of goes goosh, and then it goes beep, doop in the brain memory, okay? We have betrayal of trust in a relationship. If there's betrayal and cheating, that can cause emotional stress. That can affect other relationships. Public humiliation, if you're laughed or teased, causing shame, embarrassment. Again, I'm just giving some of these examples because sometimes we forget like stuff happened to us when we were younger, and it might be carrying through now until we kind of go, oh, that's why I always do, right? And then this last one I have is an example of just unmet expectations. How maybe we have unfulfilled personal or professional goals in our life, and we just feel low, not good enough, alone, inadequate. All of those things can, be part of it. So if you feel like some of your triggers create rough waters for you, I'm hoping today to do some smooth sailing and give you some tips and tools that we can do to change this. All right. Whenever there sounds like that, I always go, oh, that's the angels just telling us, yeah, like they're confirming. If ever a cell phone rings, I'm like, oh, the angels are saying, yeah, we're good. So power of awareness. I mentioned this at the beginning. Awareness is key. I think that's the gold nugget. If we can be aware of ourselves and triggers and start to investigate, that is where the power lies. So having the awareness, because if we just go through life, yep, this is a pattern, it just happens all the time, and I get triggered over here, and I get triggered, and we don't really pay attention, like looking at it, investigate it. That's where I think the magic is. And so I put this down, yeah, this is my quote, break the autopilot spell and see what's really happening when triggers show up. Because I think sometimes we do go into autopilot, and we just go, well, that's just the way I am. That's just the way I am. But if we wanted to create some healing, some shifts and change, we can change that. But we've got to break that spell of just being on autopilot. Deepak Chopra, be the witness. Be the witness to your life. Be the silent watcher of your thoughts, your behavior. You are beneath the thinker. You are the stillness beneath the mental noise. You are the love and the joy beneath the pain. I got goosebumps right now. Deepak Chopra. But being aware is also being the witness. So I always think of it as like, I'm here, but I'm like stepping out of myself, and I'm looking over there going, just seeing it without judging it. You witness it without the judgment. That is so powerful and profound. So here are kind of the boo. Become aware. Look at yourself. What are your triggers? Notice when they arise, because again, triggers create patterns. Patterns are triggers. They will come again, right? People will poke at those little thorns in your flesh. So become aware of them, and then try a new and different approach to change it, to decrease the degree of amplification, to heal it, right? But we've got to have that awareness key piece in there. So let's talk about ways to begin to overcome your triggers. Boom. Here is the acronym, RELEASED. So this is recognize your triggers, embrace, let go, explore, accept, shift, empower, and deepen. And we're going to go through these each once, singly. So I've got a story to share, but I need a drink first here. So I'm going to share a story with you. In 2017, I did a retreat. Many of you might know her, Annette Rogolo. She has been a speaker here. She's a dear friend of mine. Annette and I were co-hosting a retreat together in Mount Shasta with about 20 participants. And we went out a day early, rented a car, and we were driving up to Mount Shasta. And actually, this kind of looks like where we were 20, 30 minutes from the mountain. And I was driving, of course. Right? I just realized that I was driving, and she was the passenger. And ahead of us, maybe 200 yards, was another car. And all of a sudden, I see like white smoke coming out from the tires, and I was like, why is there white smoke from the tires? Like, what's happening? So the car had gone into the median, but we were kind of coming up and turning a curve, and on that curve was a bridge. So we were going up and we were turning. And as she was hitting that turn, she slid off the road and hit the inside median. Well, it bumped her car this way. Then she rolled, the car went in the air. I felt like I was watching a movie, a Hollywood movie. And it was in the air, and it rolled over twice and landed facing this way in the right lane. As that was happening, I literally said out of my mouth, Archangel Michael, please protect those people. Archangel Michael, please. It just came out of my mouth. It's like, please protect those people. And so we drove around them, because we were pretty close to them, and parked the car. Behind us was a huge semi-truck who could see all this unfolding because he's high up in the air. So he pulled up smart. He pulled up in the right lane right in front of the car, who was now facing this direction. So he stopped traffic from coming into them because they were on this curve. So he gets out. I'm in the car past them, and I look at Annette, and I said, I have to go help. And she's like, I'm staying in the car. I'm calling 911. So she stayed in the car. I got out. I ran to the car, and I met the driver of the truck. And it was like a little Toyota Corolla. And all the airbags had gone off. So we couldn't see anybody inside. All we saw was airbags. And he goes, I'll go to the driver. You go look in the back seat. And I remember going, I'm here to help these people, but please help me be strong, because I didn't know what we're going to see or what we're going to find inside. And I'm not an EMT. I'm not, I don't do this kind of thing, but I want to help people. So I was just like, please help me. So I opened the door, and there's two little boys in the back seat, buckled in, thank goodness. They're probably about 6 and 8 years old, no shoes on. It's like, do you see? They're in t-shirts and shorts. Like, I remember what they were wearing. I remember they didn't have shoes on. And I unbuckled them. I said, come out here. They were in shock. They were just like little zombies. So I brought them out. I was holding them and hugging them. Well, I brought them out, but behind the car, and I noticed we were on this bridge now, and the railing was this high up. It was the smallest railing, like it should have been much, much higher. Like you could have just sat on it, and over the edge was about a 60-foot drop. Like it was not a ditch, it was a ravine down. And so her car was maybe 4 feet from that railing. And so I grabbed these boys, I'm like, you're okay, breathe, are you hurt? The truck driver got the woman out of the front seat, and her fingernail hit the steering wheel and passed her quick and was bleeding. That was all the injuries that they had, was one bloodied fingernail. And so we were thankful. But we were the first to arrive, and at one point, there were other people starting to stop and say, oh, I can help, because they couldn't see any police officers or firefighters, anybody. So traffic was starting to get backed up. And so I, have the other people showed up, and the boys took the boys, and I'm like directing traffic, so, because it's behind, It was interesting. It was an interesting situation. All was well. The police came, we gave the report, we drove to Mount Shasta, and we did the retreat, and it was phenomenal. I come home back to Minnesota. I have 2 kids, ages 15 and 17. One is just getting her driver's license. The other has been only driving for a couple years. Even though that scene turned out great for I got triggered and I started losing it. And I didn't want my kids to get in a car. I didn't want to be in a car. All I was doing was what ifing, because I was going back to that accident. What if that car had flipped one more time? They would have been over that ravine. What if that truck driver didn't stop? Traffic could have plowed right into them. Do you know what I mean? I just started what ifing. And so that trigger, I got triggered. Even though the event turned out okay, I internalized it. And I believe my old car accidents that I told you earlier, the car accidents, the mild ones I had, I think it tied in. And it reignited. And so I ended up actually going into a friend of mine to do some QNRT to help me with this, because it locked it in so vividly for me. But I wanted to share this story because even though that turned out okay, nobody was severely injured and everyone was okay. I got triggered and I was a hot mess when I came home, and I was just like, I needed to do some work on that. So I wanted to share that. So the key here is you gotta recognize the trigger, but be without judgment of it. Don't judge yourself. Just notice the thoughts and emotions, what's showing up for you. That's key. Awareness is key. I'm gonna keep repeating it. You gotta have awareness. Then the E is embrace. Allow yourself to feel your emotional trigger. Embrace the experience with self-compassion and self-love. It's okay to feel your feels. And I think that when we give ourselves permission, then it's almost like it goes, oh, really? Then it's like, yeah, and then now we can move through it. Now we can shift it and change it. Because you're not in resistance saying, I can't feel this, I shouldn't feel this, why am I feeling this, right? The L is for letting go of the attachment to the trigger's emotional charge. And my example I want to share with you is the car accidents I had when I was younger. If I wasn't willing to look at that, I would have always been the driver. But now I can drive in the car with my kids, let my daughters drive, and I'm not like doing this when I'm driving. I'm calm, and because I allowed myself to be willing to release the attachment of like, I'm gonna have to drive because I need to be in control, right? So I had to look at that trigger, meaning I had to be willing to grab the tweezers to pull out the thorn. E is explore, investigate the root cause of the triggers. Use that magnifying glass and look at any limiting beliefs or thought patterns that keep you stuck. This is where start connecting the dots. Look at how you can connect the dots. When did this happen? What meaning am I giving this? The next one is accept the triggers as an opportunity for growth. This is important because you can take this into the present moment with non-resistance. Remember we said resistance persists? This is non-resistance and grace. So when you do that, then you can say, I can transform. I can make a change with this trigger. It doesn't have to be stuck. Then you shift your perspective, reframing your thoughts about the trigger. View it as a positive catalyst for positive change. Your trigger does not have to define who you are unless you want it to, right? Again, it's always a choice. We can stay with it and, oh, it's just who I am. I just get triggered and that's how it is. Or we can go, I'm gonna maybe work on this and see if I can change this if you want to, right? Everything's a choice. But when you do, you go from being the victim of your triggers to a victor. You get to be empowered and create a shift and like not get triggered by something or someone or a situation, okay? E is for empower yourself. Take proactive steps to address the trigger and cultivate an empowered mindset for transformation. This is, practicing mindfulness, transformative practices that help you shift and grow. And we're all different. We're all different. So what resonates for Jay might not resonate with me or you. We have different things, but being mindful, our mindset is such a powerful part of how we grow and heal and evolve and shift if we choose to. Again, everything's a choice. Deepen your understanding is the last one. Is this engage in introspective inquiry about yourself, deepening your understanding of your lessons, yourself, the triggers, and trust yourself in your journey. And this is what I think about this, is that when we can trust ourselves and create shift and change for ourselves, it's powerful. But you know what else it is? We can then relate to somebody else who's going through this because we've gone through some of it, the shift. We can help other people. And, everybody wants to be seen and heard. And if you say, I experienced the same thing, I had that happen to me, and this is how I helped get through it. This is how I moved through it. You can be a support person for somebody else. So this isn't always just about, healing you, but you can then help somebody else along the way too. So that's what I'm saying. Trust yourself and trust the journey that's unfolding for you as you do work with triggers. All right, here are my final thoughts. And I think I'm doing okay on time. I tend to overtalk and keep going, but I think we're good. So some of my final thoughts here. So remind yourself that you're safe. Say if you're out with friends at a restaurant and maybe there's a song that triggers you or a smell that triggers you and it brings you back. You're not there, you're here. Remind yourself you're safe, because that is a way for us to have this grounded, our foundation, and feeling safe is a key element for people to feel okay, so we can then see what we're gonna do about it, right? So remember that you're safe. It's really important. This one's always practice self-compassion and self-love and forgiveness. Really take that to heart. And no matter what you're going through and what leveling degree of trauma that you experienced or trigger that you're having, love yourself, have compassion for what you experienced. And we all have triggers, and they're all different because we're all unique, and we've all had a different history on the people, place, things, situation, and events that have happened in our lives. But if you can just go, I love myself through this, I can get through this, and I forgive, and that will help you to create some shift and change here. And I'm a huge believer in meditation. I think it's fantastic, and it can do so many powerful things for us health-wise and mental, emotional, spiritual, all the things. But find what works for you and tap into healing modalities. This community is abundant with people that are here to help and serve and offer and teach. So connect and really step into what resonates with you, because when we can meditate and we can find different practices that can help us to grow and evolve and get through anything that shows up in our life. I truly believe that. And don't hesitate to reach out and ask for help. Like I told you, when I came back from Mount Shasta, I was messed up from helping people that were okay, right? But I took on that trigger and I needed someone to help me. So I reached out to a practitioner and I got my help, and it was wonderful. And I'm glad I did that. So I encourage you, don't feel like you have to go this alone, but I do encourage you to investigate and get to know yourself on a deeper level and start to do your own work, your own practice to figure out, oh my gosh, where did this patchouli trigger come from? Oh, 30 years ago when I was a cocktail waitress and when I was 20, right? Look at that stuff. And then if you need more help, reach out. Ask for help from others, because what we want to do, we want to release those thorns and set ourselves free. Let those thorns go. So the final, and that didn't turn out, but I have a beautiful picture of a lily in the lake here. I would love to bring you into a gentle guided meditation to kind of bring this all together, if you guys are open to that. Yeah, I'm seeing some head shake. Thank you. I like the feedback. It's great. All right, so ground your feet to the earth. Go ahead and take a few deep breaths. And if it's comfortable for you, close your eyes. And I want you to take 3 really slow, deep breaths, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you exhale, I want you to release your belly, release your gut, and just let your belly be soft. Relax into your belly. Inhale and exhale. allowing yourself to settle fully into this present moment. And you can even exhale with some sound if you want. Just let that go. And as you breathe, I want you to bring your awareness to your physical body. Just say hello to you in your body in this moment. What do you feel? What do you sense? Your shoulders, maybe your sits bones, your feet. Maybe you feel your jaw, your face. Or maybe it's your hands, your wrists. Just say hello to your body. And keep breathing, feeling a gentle rise and fall of your chest or feeling your belly breathe. And let each inhale bring calmness. And let each exhale release any tension in your body. And now begin to visualize a soft violet light surrounding you. And maybe you feel it within you and around you in your auric field. But just sense and feel this violet light. And this light represents love. It represents compassion and healing energy. And feel it like a protective cocoon of warmth and serenity, like a big giant hug from this violet light. And now shift your focus to any challenges, any triggers, any emotions that you're currently experiencing in your life. And I want you to just acknowledge them without judgment. And allow them to come into your awareness by seeing them as white puffy clouds floating out in front of you. Just let those little white clouds float out in front of you. And now allow this violet light that's around you to expand and gently embrace those trigger clouds. And allow the light to infuse them with healing energy and transforming their intensity into a softer, more manageable energy. Think of that violet light as a soothing salve. And now consciously connect to your higher self, if you haven't already. Say hello to your higher power, your higher self. And acknowledge your awareness and your willingness to begin to work on healing any triggers that may be present or showing up in your life from time to time. Acknowledge your awareness and willingness to work on those triggers. And allow yourself grace to explore these triggers so you can begin to heal and diffuse them gently through your conscious bravery of exploring personal growth in this area of your life. You've got this. You can do this. You can transform. Trust yourself. Take soulful action. And expand into compassion as you intend to transform your triggers. And now visualize a beautiful, crystalline, sparkling white light infusing you and all of those white puffy clouds with healing and calming energy. that will assist you in growing, shifting, changing, and evolving in new ways. So let the beautiful crystalline white light just be sparkling within you, around you, infusing into those clouds. And breathe this loving and healing energy into every thought, every feeling, every emotion, and every cell of your being. And see those white clouds begin to evaporate and dissipate into magnificent sparks of crystalline white light that look like fairies twinkling around you. Breathe this in. Allow yourself to feel a sense of lightness, freedom, joy, and expansive energy within you and around you. And have a grateful heart. Send love and compassion to yourself. And if it feels good to you, place your hands over your heart. And let's take 3 nice deep breaths together, in through our nose, out through our mouth. And exhale with a sound. Here we go. Take a breath. Good. And one more deep breath. And when you're ready to come back to the sanctuary and open your eyes, go ahead and do so, but I want you to notice, what do you see? What do you hear? Look at the shapes, the colors, the textures around you within this room, and just be present in where you are in this moment. And I'd like to just end by saying thank you from my heart for having me here today and allowing me to share with you what I shared today. And may it bring peace and information and inspiration, abundance, healing to you as you move forward. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Juhl Jaxen. And she will be back for our healing circle here, so don't go away. But now it's time for our offering. So while you are digging deep, just want to remind everyone that we are an independent organization, totally dependent on your donations to help keep this building maintained, to keep these wonderful speakers and venues going, and to be here for you on a regular basis. So I ask the ushers to distribute the baskets and dig deep. Thank you. go through a ceremony of blessing the green here to help it grow and multiply, since this helps us be a part of something bigger. So if you will, repeat after me. Perfect love, flowing through me, blesses and multiplies all that I give, all that I receive, and all that I am. Wow. Okay, let's circle up.
Everybody, yeah, let's make a big circle. Nice. Ah, great. So let's get our feet grounded and feeling connected to the earth. And I invite you to close your eyes again. You don't have to. But just take a breath. And bring your attention to your heart center, your heart space. And feel this expansive energy of love, light, gratitude, understanding, forgiveness, faith, hope, support. And imagine this is just this beautiful color. What color is your heart? You might have different rainbows of colors happening right now. What I want you to do for fun here is imagine that we're going to share our love and our light from our hearts with everyone in the group. So let that flow down your left arm into the person to your left. And know that you're receiving from the person from your right. And now imagine that we are circulating all of this beautiful, supportive, loving energy clockwise through us, around us, and we are each giving, and each of us is receiving. Can you feel that? Allow yourself to receive. So many of us, so many times, are uber givers, but we forget to receive. This is a giving and receiving circle. And allow that light to fulfill you, bring you joy, happiness, peace, and harmony. And know that you are sharing your heart with others in this group. And may it bless each and every one of us as we leave here today on our own path, our own journey, our own destinations, and to the people and the communities that we also affect through our smile, our gratitude, helping others. It's the ripple in the pond. So fill your cup up with this beautiful energy here today, and know that you will leave here sharing it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your community. Be that ray of light that sparks and inspires others. And let's take 3 deep breaths together, and we're going to make sounds with each exhale. Here we go. Good. Another deep breath. And this next one, let it be a tone, a sound, a sing. Here we go. Gentle squeeze to each of your people, to the right and left. Bring your hands together at your heart and rub them together. And at this time, just take a look around. Make eye contact and say hello, and gratitude for everyone in this circle for sharing energy, joy, love, light, the sparks that we get to leave here with and share with the rest of our community and the world.